Hello again, and welcome back to the channel. This is Michael from TOEFLresources.com, and today I'm happy to share the 2021 versions of my TOEFL speaking templates. Now, keep in mind, this video is just the templates. If you want detailed guides to each of these questions, you can check out the links in the video description down below. Let's get started by talking about question 1, which is the independent speaking question. Now, I have two basic templates for this task. First up, if you want to include two supporting reasons, you can use the template that you see on the screen here. You're going to start by stating your main idea in just one sentence. And depending on what the question looks like, you'll say, I agree with the idea that, or I disagree with the idea that, I think it is better to, or I think it is a great or terrible idea to, and then just fill in the blank. That should take just 10, maybe 12 seconds. After that, you'll give a basic transitional sentence. I feel this way for several reasons. Now, the transition is totally optional. I think it gives the answer better flow and slightly better structure, but you can leave it out if you want. Just experiment as you practice. If you leave out the transition, you might have more time for your reasons and examples. Anyways, next up is the first reason. You'll say first, you'll state the reason, and then you'll give a short example from your life. Next, you'll say secondly, and then you'll state the second reason. You'll notice I don't include a second personal example. Basically, you've only got 45 seconds in total to speak, so I really don't think there's time for a second personal example. However, as you practice, you can experiment. If you're a really quick speaker, you might have time for a second example, and it's good to include one. Next up is the template when you want to include just one supporting reason. Now, it's totally okay to use one supporting reason. You can still get a perfect score with one reason. In fact, a lot of students do that very successfully, so the choice is yours. In this template, the beginning is exactly the same. Just state your main idea, and then you're going to jump right into that reason. First, give the reason, and then an example. Now, in this template, I do include a short conclusion. That's why I think, and then you kind of repeat your main idea. Now, I include the conclusion here because a lot of students run out of things to say when they have just one reason, and the conclusion comes in handy. But once again, the conclusion here is optional, and you should experiment as you practice for the test. Now, you'll notice even though there's one reason, I still use the transitional word first. I think that's totally fine. It still sounds pretty natural, and it makes it easy for you to include a second reason if you kind of change your mind halfway through. Next up is the campus situation question. Once again, I have two main templates, and they're both pretty similar. 99% of the time, you're going to use the template that you see on the screen here. You're going to start by summarizing the reading part in two sentences. In the first sentence, you're going to say according to the announcement or the letter or the article, and then you're going to state the change which it mentions. Now, the reading always mentions one change happening on campus, so that's what you're looking for. In the next sentence, you're going to state the two reasons for this change, and the reading always has two reasons for the change. Now, the reading summary, maximum about 15 seconds. Most of your score comes from the listening, so you're going to focus on that. After that, you're going to have a basic transition. The man opposes this. The woman supports this, whatever. That's just 2 or 3 more seconds. And then after that, for 45 seconds, most of your answer is a summary of the man's opinion or the woman's opinion. To begin with, he points out that, moreover, he argues that. And these are his two reasons for supporting or opposing the change. That's all you got to do. You don't need a conclusion in this template. In fact, the conclusions are optional right across the board in all of the speaking questions. Now, 1% of the time, you might get what we call a mixed opinion question. And in this case, the template is a little tiny bit different. It starts out the same with the same reading summary. But when you state the opinion, you're going to say the man mostly supports this, or the woman mostly opposes this. So in this case, it's a mixed opinion, but they still do support or oppose overall. So you're going to listen for that. But the way it works is, first they say why they support the change or why they oppose the change. And you're going to say, to begin with, he points out that. But then in the next reason, the man or the woman will say why they support the other point of view, right? Why they would support the opposite of their own opinion. And so you're going to say, however, he also argues, or however, she also argues. So you can see the change is very slight, and it only happens like maybe 1% of the time. But keep this in mind, and hopefully, if you do get a mixed opinion question, you can use the right template. Next up is the general to specific question. In this case, there's just one, or actually, no, there's two templates here, pardon me. First up is the template if you get two examples. And you're going to start out with a summary of the reading. And it's going to be just one sentence, according to the reading. And then you're going to say the title of the reading. Now, the reading always has a title. So in one of the samples from ETS, the title is Flagship Species. So you're going to say, according to the reading, flagship species is or are, and then you're going to have a quick explanation of what that means, and you're getting that from the reading. And that's, again, going to take like 10 or 15 seconds, not too much. After that, you have a transitional sentence. The professor elaborates on this. And then you're going to state the two examples from the listening, from the lecture. First, he explains, and then you summarize the first example. He says, and then you give the details. So what do I mean by summarize the first example? Well, in the question from ETS, the first example is all about the macaw, the bird. And it talks about how when the macaw declined, it affected the whole ecosystem. So you're going to say something like, first, he explains how the decline of the macaw affected the entire ecosystem. And then after that, you're going to give all the details. I don't want you to just say, first he mentions the macaw. That's kind of basic. That's kind of simple. I want a detailed sentence that totally summarizes that example in one sentence. And then you're going to give the details. And of course, second, he explains, and then you're mentioning whatever the second example is. It's going to be some other animal species. The other template is for when you've got one example. And it's basically the same, right? You're starting with a quick summary of the reading. You've got the transition. And then it's just first he explains how the decline of the macaw affected the whole ecosystem. And then you're going to give lots and lots and lots of details. I'd say one example probably comes up 50% of the time. Keep in mind, sometimes if there's one example, it's more likely to be a personal example from the life of the lecturer. You'll handle it exactly the same, but just kind of be prepared for that, and don't be surprised if you get something like that in the lecture. Again, though, when there's one example, I don't think you should have a conclusion. I think that's kind of a waste of time, and there's so many details in the lecture that you can use the full minute just talking about them. Lastly is question 4, which is the academic lecture question. There's only one template for this one. Start out by introducing like what it's about. What's the concept? What's the argument that the lecture makes? You're going to say something like, the lecturer explains how, in one of the samples from ETS, it's about how animals survive in cold environments. So you'll simply say, the lecturer explains how animals survive in cold environments. And then you're going to summarize each of the examples one after the other. And again, I'm looking for summaries here in the first sentence. I want details. I want some sophistication. So for example, you might say, first, she explains how mountain goats survive in northern Russia because of their special feet. And then she notes that, and you're giving all the details you can remember about those mountain goats. And then you're going to say, second, she explains how polar bears survive in Canada because of their thick body fat. She adds that, and then you're explaining all the details. And that's what you're going to do. In my experience, question 4 always has 2 examples. So that's why I've included just one template. But again, if for some reason you get just one example, there's no big deal. You're just cutting off the second half, right? And you'll just do the first couple sentences here all by themselves. Now, you'll note how I even repeated some of the verbs, right? I repeated explains and I repeated explains. And I think I did the same thing in the question 3 template with some of the verbs. I don't think that's a big deal. I'm trying to keep these templates simple and easy for you, like simple and easy to use and also to memorize. But if you want to experiment and change the verbs, that's fine too. It's totally okay. And anyways, that's all I have to say about templates for the speaking section. I'll give you a few tips before we close out because I can't resist. First off, tips about language use. You want to use transitions like as a result or therefore, moreover, in addition. I don't put these in the template because you kind of have to use them naturally as you add details. You can't really force them into the template, but just try your best to use them as much as possible. The human rater is looking for them, and even the speech rater is looking for them. Secondly, use a mix of sentence types. Simple sentences, compound sentences are usually pretty easy to use, and maybe even some complex sentences if you can fit them in, although those are a little bit more challenging. Third, use a range of words. Try to avoid repeating the same words again and again within the specific questions. That's because, again, both the human rater and the speech rater are looking for a wide-ranging vocabulary. Finally, a few tips specifically for the speech rater. First of all, word count matters. You are really being judged, in part, on how many words per minute you include. So try to avoid speaking slowly. Speak as quickly as you can without feeling too uncomfortable. Secondly, avoid pauses between words within sentences. I know that's really hard to do, and I've even included lots of inappropriate pauses just in this video, but try your best. Also, avoid breaks, because you'll get penalized for those. Practice your pronunciation. The speech rater really cares about your pronunciation, particularly your pronunciation of vowels. Now, look, that's easier said than done, right? It's hard to practice your pronunciation. But do your best. If you have opportunities to work with native speakers, take advantage of them. And, you can even do basic kind of listen and repeat type stuff with YouTube videos and that sort of thing. So work on your pronunciation if possible. All right, I am going to leave it at that. But if you want to know more about the test, you can check out my website, which is TOEFLresources.com. If you go there, you can read guides to the speaking section and the writing section and the reading section. And you can even sign up for my essay evaluation service, where you send me your TOEFL essays and I correct them line by line. I fix your grammar, I talk about your structure, and then I send them back to you with an estimated score. It's a service that a lot of people seem to like, so I'd love to have you on board. Now, if you have any questions about the test, just leave a comment down below. I will try to answer them as soon as humanly possible. All right, that's all for today. But if you come back next week, I'm going to try to get some templates maybe for the IELTS and the Duolingo test. Now, that's not a promise. Don't hold me to it, but Yeah, I'll hopefully have a few of those for you guys. So I'll see you then. Take care. Goodbye.